I'm Gail Pickrell. I was the pastor here in the late 1990s. I almost said 1900s. Late 1990s and 2000s. And we had a youth group at the time. It was not as big as it had been earlier, but boy, did we have some mighty youth that were part of that. And some of those youth went on work projects, both internationally, like with the Seeds of Learning, to Nicaragua or El Salvador. Others went to, I remember going to Portland, Oregon, or Oakland, or places not quite so far away. But we're going to hear from 3 of those young women that had been part of that youth group, and the kind of impact, maybe, or some of the seeds, actually seeds of learning, that were deposited in their minds and hearts, and we're going to be hearing how that took off for them. So we're going to be listening and hearing what Rachel Pellets has to say. Rachel has, let me just say that all 3 of them went from our high schools here in Santa Rosa to UC Berkeley, and 2 of them majored in the sciences. We're not quite there with Rachel yet. We'll be there in just a minute. 2 of them went into the science field. 1 of them went into journalism. And then from there, I will keep going about Rachel. She went on from there to the Massachusetts MIT, where she got a degree in environmental engineering, and then went on to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in London, where she got her PhD in infectious and tropical diseases. And from there, she's had amazing amount of experiences. I'm not going to go through all of them, but her address now is Marin County, but it was in Africa and Asia and England and I don't know where all, but it's wonderful to have her now because she's the director of the Aquia project, fantastic project that I hope we'll hear a lot about as she shares her work. Liv went from UC Berkeley to Stanford to get her master's degree in environmental engineering, and then she got her doctor of philosophy, her PhD there, in environmental fluid mechanics. She was a research assistant in environmental fluid mechanics and a teaching assistant. Also, Rachel was a research fellow at the London School of Hygiene. I mean, they both just took off in their educational pursuits. Liv is now a hydrologist and an oceanographer, and she will be sharing some of her work that she's been doing both in Santa Cruz and on the East Coast. She now lives in Vermont, right? But gets to come home to Santa Rosa to visit her mom and dad. Elaine has been quite ill, so she is here for a while this month to be with Craig and Elaine. It's lovely to have her. And Holly, she was living in Germany after UC Berkeley, but then she came back and has been living in Healdsburg and has been doing various things, but journalism and doing stuff with advocacy and community engagement in Healdsburg. So again, a variety of experiences. They've all married. They all have 2 children, a couple of which are here, one which is a beautiful baby in the back with Craig. So we're just so pleased that they were able to come. This was supposed to have happened last week, but because of COVID, because of travel schedules, we needed to postpone it. And I'm just thrilled that they are here today and willing to share with us. So, yes. I have a whole several-page bio that I picked up from LinkedIn. If you could look at their bio, it's incredible. But I want them to share with you who and what they are and what they've been about. So, Rachel, would you come first?
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Gail, and thank you to everyone. It's really just so amazing to be here today thanks, Gail, and see so many of the same faces and also the same energy and warmth that I remember from my childhood. And I think the main thing that has changed is the chairs. actually, but which have been upgraded. But everyone else, almost everything else feels very familiar. So I have wonderful memories of this church. So I started going probably when I was around my daughter Kira's age, who's around 5, and but what was really memorable is around my teenage years time, which is a really formative time where you're trying to figure out where you're going. And I remember, from what Pastor Lindsay said, about like kind of being in or being out. There was, of course, a lot of that going on at that time. But, coming to this church and thinking about, what can we do that's bigger than ourselves, right? In terms of service and justice. And, a lot of the themes that I see are still happening today. So that, that's really a pleasure to see. And, I sometimes remember coming here and just kind of wrestling with a lot that was going on, my teenage years, and listening to the sermons and kind of looking up at this light coming out of the middle and kind of leaving here with this openness and peace and inspiration. So I just want to, thank you so much. And, just to talk through some of the actual, specific examples, some of the most amazing experiences were through the youth group, where I became friends with Leave and Holly, who, are some of my best friends today, too. And one thing that stands out is some of the work trips that we did. And some of you in the room were on some of those trips. So I want to show a photo from 1998. And this is quite grainy because this is, pre-digital photos, of course. But you can see, many of us, or many, this is me here. Holly and Leave there. And there's, some other individuals, too, that you may recognize. And, that was in Tijuana in Mexico, and we went to build a house with the More Ministries, and this is the house that we worked on. And I do have to say there were many skills that I gained during my childhood through my family, and I thank you to my mom for many, many of the skills that I gained, but construction was not one of them. That I learned growing up. And so, during that trip, I definitely got more out of it than I gave. And I remember actually one of my first bonding experiences with Bob was I think he was showing me how to use a hammer. So, I was kind of starting very, very basic. But, the energy and the spirit of that trip really felt right, about doing something bigger than ourselves, about serving, about contributing to the community and engagement, and just thinking about how we can give back. And so the next summer, if you can do another slide, this is from Oakland in 1999, and this is myself there on the right in the blue and Leave with the mask on. We were doing demolition work there, and then you may recognize some others here. In the other photo as well. And we were working to improve low-income housing there. And I know some other people, I think Gail and Linda Allen and others came for some of the days that we were there too. So, that was really inspirational. And then the next year, in 2000, we did a trip to El Salvador to help build a school with Seeds of Learning. And this was one of the most life-changing experiences of my life, to be somewhere totally different, experience another culture, and trying to do something bigger than ourselves. And, and it was, working on this school together, but then also having the time with the individuals, Linda Carroll and Bob Smith and, Carol Hasnick and Larry Trent and others, getting to learn about their own journeys and relationships and marriages and career journeys and, all of these things that I think we really dug deep and got to know each other and got to ask big questions. And, that was just really, really amazing. We all rode together in the back of a pickup truck. We didn't get our luggage for 3 days. So we had, very bonding experiences around that as well, with photo evidence at the end if we want to get into that. But and I think too, just learning that there's a big world out there, and not everyone has the opportunities that we have, and that that really struck home to me. And thinking about, okay, well, what can we do to really contribute to make things just a little bit better. So then, as Gail said, after this in 2001, I don't have a slide for every year, don't worry. So then in 2001, I started at UC Berkeley. I went into environmental engineering, as Gail said, which combined my love of science and math with something bigger than ourselves as well. And then at this time, maybe you can go to the next slide. At this time, I also learned about one of the biggest global problems, which is around safe water and sanitation. And so these are some photos that I've taken. This one is in Ghana. Oh, sorry, can you go back? And just learning that around a quarter of the people in the world don't have access to safe drinking water and are drinking from sources that aren't clean, and that 3 billion people lack access to safely managed sanitation. And I went in my first semester at Berkeley, I went to a class and the professor showed pictures of a toilet kind of like that, and I just remember thinking, oh, it's El Salvador, right? Like where I just resonated so much with me, and also learned. I remember the statistic that she said at the time, and I meant to look this up to see if it's still how it's changed, but I forgot. But which is a third of the world has intestinal worms. And so, just kind of some of these inequities really hit home, especially given, my recent trip to El Salvador, but, also thinking about, wow, this isn't just El Salvador or other places. There's a lot of people in the world that don't have water and sanitation. And this still blows my mind that, even in this year, that so many people don't have access to these basic human rights. And so, after this is my first semester at Berkeley, I was like, I'm all in. This is what I want to do with my life. And really from there, I went to Haiti for 3 months working on water disinfection. I went to MIT and did a master's. And actually, my next slide is from Ghana, where I did my research in 2006. This is a photo that I took at a hand pump. Oh, now you can hear me better. And so this, and one thing that strikes me about this photo is that it's all women. And so, that's one thing that also resonates is, this isn't only a public health crisis, but it's affecting women, right? The women are the ones that have to collect water, that are responsible for washing and cooking in the households. And so, it's really, when we think about how we can make change, it's really around women. And then one more slide I have. So then I went to work in Canada for a few months at a nonprofit, and ended up working in Bangladesh for part of that. And this is a photo that I took there, again, and here you'll notice, it's all children. So, again, women and children are the ones that are really affected by not having safe drinking water. And then, I have a lot of other life things that happen, but I won't go into all the details. I got married, and Gail actually married us. And so, again, having that connection to Christ Church has been really special. I did my PhD in London and then worked in Zambia as well, working with HIV-positive mothers and young children who didn't have access to safe water. But what I do today, so the next slide is actually about the Aquia Institute, which is where I work today. And I started there in 2012 in Kenya, in Nairobi. I was there for 5 years and then moved back 6 years ago when I had my daughter, Kira, who's here today. And what we do is we work to improve water and sanitation globally through research and science. So, for example, here on the left, one thing that we work on is improving water quality testing. So one thing I've learned is in a lot of places in Africa in particular, water isn't even tested, so we don't know what the quality is it safe or not? So we're doing a lot to improve testing. Rural sanitation, as I mentioned, a lot of people don't have a safe place to go to the bathroom. So looking at strategies around, why that is, what can be done to improve sanitation, especially for the poor. We're looking at, who the poor are and how subsidies can be implemented to improve sanitation. And then urban sanitation. So another public health crisis is around pit emptying. So when toilets fill up, particularly in urban areas, they have to be emptied. So where does that waste go? And so we've been looking at strategies around that. And then data science. And so this is a map that we've created of Uganda, looking at different water quality risks and using different environmental conditions. So I think then I just have like another thing that just shows that we also do research on, these are peer-reviewed publications, so we also publish on our specific work as well. And then I just have two other photos just from some of our work, and you can tell these are better photos because now we're in digital photo age of 2016. But this is in Kenya. This is around one of the programs that we did about pit emptying. So, as I said, when toilets fill up, what happens? And so we were working on different strategies to subsidize different models so that the waste is actually dumped into a treatment. This is a wastewater treatment facility. And so, it's a safely managed system. And so it's not, going out into the community. And then we have one, I think this is my last slide. This is another thing that we are doing, which is hand pump chlorinators. So to improve water quality, we are looking at different technologies to chlorinate water at the hand pumps. So these are different technologies that we are trying out in Uganda. So that is my last slide for now. I have other things if we have more time at the end. And I also brought photo albums that I know Linda Carroll did as well from El Salvador and other things. But I'm just so grateful to Christ Church for being part of this journey and for the inspiration and the support that I've had. I know, also there's some people in the room that have also contributed to fundraisers that we've had at Aquia, so I also am grateful for that. And just the support over the years and the inspiration. So I feel as though I'm very far from figuring all the things out, but I'm just hoping that I'm leaving the world a little better than before.
Leaving the world a little better, I would say fantastic. What she didn't say is she's actually the director of Aquia now. She's been working there for 10 years, but within the last year, the global director. I don't think she brought any materials about Aquia with her today, but you can go online, and yes, if we can support that project, it's fantastic. Leave is here all the way from Vermont, and we're so glad she and I were both positive a week ago with COVID. We're both negative, but the two of them were traveling last Saturday. I know Rachel said she didn't get into San Francisco till midnight, and I don't know when you got here, but it needed to be postponed. But we're here today.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to see everyone back, and it brings a lot of warmth to my heart to be back in this space. It was a really great community to be growing up in and to feel safe in and to learn how to express yourself and find your own voice and find the confidence to go out and be a change maker. We got to do our performances here and lead. We occasionally, like the youth group would lead a Sunday service and things, and that really gave us the space to figure out, what are the issues that are important to us? What do we want to bring to our community? And I think all those experiences really helped us, in becoming the people we are today, hopefully. Overall good people. But yeah, so it's really nice to be back and see that you guys are continuing to create that space and welcoming youth performers. When I was young and in the choir, I felt honored at the time to get the sign choir solo or the sign solo for the children's choir. But in hindsight, it may have not been a great sign of my musical ability that they didn't want me to sing. But I'm glad they found a special place for me anyway. So anyway, so in thinking about my journey, I thought of something we learned in confirmation class with Gail, which was, and I may be totally misinterpreting this in my memory, so apologies for anyone who's much more religiously educated than me, but I thought of the Wesleyan quadrilateral and how we live life with scripture, reason, experience, and tradition. And I think that having those be important parts of this community really helped form, we have the basis of scripture, which does teach us to welcome, to, be generous with the poor and welcome the stranger and do all these wonderful things. Some of the environmental messaging is a little bit more problematic because it's about dominion, but luckily we can use our reason and tradition to help interpret those and realize that in the scripture we are charged with the responsibility for the earth. And like Reverend Lindsay said, we, salvation will be when we restore our creation. So we do have a strong charge to take care of the earth and the animals and the water and the people on the planet. So that is one foundation. And then also, you can go to the next slide, reason, I do feel like we were encouraged to get an education. The three of us went to Berkeley. I went a year ahead, but I stayed a year late to hang out with them longer. So we all graduated at the same time. It's so much fun. And then and felt really encouraged, both from my parents, but also, this was a community that, encouraged education and exploring beyond just our little world, and that we went to Mexico and all these different places. And so, then I went to Stanford, and I did a PhD on coral reef hydrodynamics and studied coral reefs, which was a lot of fun when your advisor says, oh, the only grant I have is you're going to have to go scuba diving in Tahiti. It's hard to say no. But I can say that although it was a lot of fun, and there are lots of great applications for that research, you'll see later in my work that it really is important to me to be doing work that has a clear application and that serves people. And so I have come around to working closer to home. And part of that is because of the great tradition that we have. You can go to the next slide, of service and of compassion, and of understanding other people's viewpoints. I haven't kept as good of a photo archive as Rachel has, so I can't show all the things. But one of the things beyond the service projects that also really was important to me when we were in high school was our activity in the civil rights movement for LGBTQ. Like, I remember there was a proposition, and I was collecting signatures outside of, I don't know if it was Whole Foods then, but anyway, the shopping center just around there, and really learning to find my voice and find confidence to talk about difficult things with people, and do that work, even though I think it failed. Luckily, there was progress later on, but yeah. So all that was a really strong influence on me. And then also, we've had a lot of experiences. I just highlighted some of the places we went. I realized I didn't have a star on El Salvador. How could I didn't forget that trip. But we went to Portland, to Oakland, and to Mexico on trips, and those were really important. And actually, on those trips, some of the construction work that we did, one of the things in Portland that we did was putting up storm windows for low-income families to help improve the energy efficiency in their homes. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I think that was actually my first exposure in life to kind of climate justice as an issue, to the fact that not everybody has equal access to energy efficiency improvements, and they're as the cost of fuel and things get higher, that it's going to create inequities. And so I think, right here in a Portland Service Project was when I first was exposed to climate justice as an issue, which is what I work in now. So yes, we have scripture, reason, experience, and tradition that have all led me to be someone that works on climate change, and also because I love science and math, it has taken a little bit more of a technical route, so I won't bore you all with the technical details, but I will just show you some resources. So this is just, you're welcome to go see what I do at USGS. I didn't know what the tech setup was going to be, so I was possibly going to show you this website, but the next slide is just a screen capture, so you guys can all go check out some of the work that my colleagues and I have done at the Our Coast, Our Future website, and it shows the different flooding hazards for when there's little toggles over here on the left that show the storm frequency, so whether there's no storm or something like a 1 in 100 year storm, and then you can also look at the level of sea level rise, and you can see on the maps, this is zoomed into a place that you guys are likely familiar with, Bodega Bay, and you can see, so this is kind of current conditions. It's not very exciting, but you can go and toggle the website and see what kinds of flood hazards there are, and you can also see those, the dots along the shoreline show the change in where the beach is actually going to be and where the shoreline will be. So you can kind of look at these different conditions and see how things will change. This exists for the whole coast of California. So it's fun / scary to check out. But the other thing, the other thing that you can click on this website too is another, I don't have it here, but you can see also we've analyzed the flooding by census tract, so you can see who's impacted by the flooding, which is of course a very important part. As we saw, now I'm working more in New York, and as we saw with Hurricane Ida, with those big rainfall events, the people that were most impacted by that flooding were people in basement apartments or people with not great housing situations and maybe didn't have access to certain services and good housing options. So it's also the fact that we're analyzing these this flooding information by with demographic information is also really important to me, because it hopefully means that we'll be able to prepare and serve these people better. And then the last thing that I'll tell you about very briefly is just something that actually is happening right in your backyard, called the Advanced Quantitative Precipitation Information. It's a long acronym, but basically we're trying to track storms better in real time, so that when in the San Francisco Bay Area, so when like a big atmospheric river comes through, the way the radars are set up right currently is not great for tracking those, so we're improving that by putting in new radars all around the bay. This is a picture of some radars and an image of an atmospheric river. And so we'll better be able to track the water as it comes in and as it falls, and then figure out where the water goes and hopefully provide early warning systems for all the water managers. So that is something that we've been working on. The last few radars are going up in the next couple years. So you can also, this is, I'm just one of these quadrants of building the modeling software that helps project where the water is going in the system. But it's a giant system that we're working with our colleagues at National Weather Service to help us be better prepared in the events of these climate extremes that are happening. So I like to think that, and we work with lots of partners in and around the Bay Area. So those are two projects that I'm working on locally here. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you guys for being such a wonderful community to grow up in and being so inspirational. Like Rachel was saying, just getting to know, having so many great adults in our life that were not just our parents, so we would listen to you maybe a little bit. Was a really, in seeing all the great things that you guys were working on and caring about, really helped us to expand our horizons and find those issues that were close to our heart and that we felt like we could work on and try to make the world a better place. So thank you.
Fantastic sharing. There will be a chance at the very end, I hope, for questions. I know that some of it is very technical, that I have no clue what they're even talking about sometimes, but we may have some knowledgeable people who would like to ask some of the questions at the end. And again, thank you to the parents who are here and who have nurtured these young women. So Judy Pellets is here, but Holly Fox also is here, and Joan Fox is here, and Holly is going to share.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Oh, I'm a little bit nervous. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for having us. And Gail, thank you so much for all the work you put into making this happen. I started with this photo. I also don't have the deep photo archive that Rachel has, but I chose this photo because I'm pretty sure this is Easter Sunday, circa 1993. And I'm on the left. My sister Kimberly is there on the right. And I know that because we're wearing our Easter dresses that we were wearing that earlier in the day at church. So this is my church photo for you. So I grew up in this neighborhood just off of Mayette, really close to here, and I grew up in this church, and I really loved going to youth group in high school, it feels a little funny to say now, but I loved going to youth group. It was every Sunday evening, and I loved our activities and our projects, some of the trips we went on, and this is really where I learned, or I figured out who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And one of the most important lessons that I took from this church and from youth group was about taking action. Even when it felt like the change that we were working towards was impossible. And I saw a lot of action growing up in this church. Some of my sort of most meaningful memories from church from that time, I want to start with, I don't know, do you have Sunday school? When we were here, Sunday school was called Kaleidoscope, which on its own already I just love and is so meaningful to me. But one of my Kaleidoscope teachers was immigration attorney Michelle Crawford, and we were right in that little room over there. And she wrote justice on the board. And I honestly, I don't remember what she asked us afterwards or what we did. So it's maybe not that great of a story, but I think about that all the time. I think, wow, what was she trying to teach us, and what were we thinking about as young kids in Kaleidoscope Sunday School? I remember the Amnesty International letters in the back and sitting there and hoping against hope that our letters would make a difference for someone. Obviously, the amazing service projects that we went on. Something else that was really meaningful for me growing up was that we shared our space with a synagogue, and that the Ark for the Torah was right there. Whenever I talk about my church and growing up in this church, I mention that because I think it was so powerful for me to grow up in a community with multiple religions and multiple perspectives. Another part of that was that this building was always being used. I also had my Girl Scout meetings here at some point. This was not an empty building that just was used on Sundays for church services. This was a place that was used by the community, and I think that's really stuck with me as well. And as Lee mentioned, I think another sort of momentous period for us was the process of becoming a reconciling congregation. I remember the conversations, I remember the decision, and there was so much that I didn't understand at the time, and I feel emotional thinking about it now, how grateful I was to be a part of that conversation. Right, I'm still on this slide, sorry. Not there yet. I will speed through my biography. So as you've heard, I graduated from Montgomery with Rachel, then we caught up with Lee at Berkeley. I studied English literature, so I was hanging out with these brilliant engineers and studying American poetry mostly. I studied abroad in Spain my junior year and really fell in love with Europe. There's a lot I could go into there too, but it was a really important experience for me. Came back, graduated, and then after college, moved to Germany. And I ended up staying in Germany for 6 years total, with a little year in the middle to go to Chicago, get my master's degree in journalism, meet my husband, and then convince him to move back to Germany with me. So there we worked for Deutsche Welle, which is a publicly funded international broadcaster, sort of Germany's version of Voice of America. It was an incredible experience. There were 32 different language departments, and I got to work in radio, which I'd never done before, and I loved it. It was really a dream come true. So my family, my husband, and I have been back in Sonoma County for a little over 10 years. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. I drive a minivan. I live in a cul-de-sac. I'm kind of a suburban cliche now. But I also have this really rewarding work of getting to tell true stories about incredible people driving change in our community. And what that means is I do marketing and communications work for nonprofits and mission-driven businesses. And I have a couple of quick slides. So if you read the Press Democrat, this was in the Press Democrat recently. This is a Corazon Healdsburg program called Libros y Raíces. It's an early literacy program. It's one of my absolute favorite programs because its main goal is to just inspire a joy and a love of reading for families in both Spanish and English. So my name is not mentioned in this article. I'm not taking credit for the program or the article, but I kind of set this article in motion. It was really fun to do. The next slide, here I am, that's my long hair. I'm working on a video here. I'm interviewing an educator for CTE Foundation. And then if you skip to the next slide, you can kind of see the final shot. And I put the quote, Nicole's clip here, "A relevant and meaningful education for all students is true social justice." And so I get to work on really exciting projects where we get to talk about stuff like this. Next slide. And then actually just this past week, I was working on another video for CTE Foundation, their Tinker Academy, which is a free 2-week hands-on STEM program, mostly to inspire young girls and students of color to pursue STEM, so maybe some future Leaves and Rachels. I interviewed these two young girls about their career aspirations and their experience with Tinker Academy, and then if you can go to the next slide, I interviewed that little girl there. And then I actually didn't take this picture, but I included this video of a father recording his daughter giving kind of her final presentation. This is one of my favorite photos to take. I always take this photo whenever I'm at these events. I love taking photos of parents loving their children, really, and it's so cool. And I'll talk a little bit later about this, but I think it can sometimes be a narrative shift for people when the assumption is that these parents maybe don't care or they don't love their kids as much as we do. And so I always take this photo of the parents taking the video or the photo of their kids. Next slide. And this is just a quick, this is a part of one of our impact reports, so another kind of thing that I would work on. This is the impact report for Corazon Healdsburg. And the thing that I'm most sort of excited about this impact report, because impact reports can be really boring, is I was able to make 2 major changes for this impact report. Usually impact reports for nonprofits are donor focused. They want to show their donors that they've spent their money really well. And I have kind of shifted ours to be, I kind of considered a yearbook for the organization, and all the stakeholders are an audience. So this impact report is bilingual. It's in both Spanish and English. The other major shift is it's really story driven. I will talk about this again in a second, but I'm really obsessed with the first person. And so the kind of little blurb up there at the top is an institutional blurb about the program. This is a prenatal workshop series for families. But then that main story there is Daniela's words and her experience with the program. And so as much as I can, I'm trying to step out of the way and create spaces for people to tell their own stories. All right, I think next slide. Okay, how much time do I have? Are we doing okay? Okay, so a lot of times people think of communications as I'm communicating to you. I have information that you don't have, and it's my job to tell you that. And of course, a lot of the work that I do is that. I'm making a flyer about an event, I'm telling you what time it is and when it starts. But the thing that I've discovered in my career and that really aligns with my experience here at Christ Church is all the ways that communications actually can drive change and can be an engine for equity. Next slide. So, kind of a funny little example, but if you're a journalist or you work in communications, you usually have a style guide. It's kind of your rule book, like do we put a hyphen in nonprofit or not, right? And for me, it's also an opportunity to really be intentional about the words that we're using. So I use this as some of the examples that I've found. So we would prefer to use share versus distribute. We would use underserved in place of those in need or vulnerable, and with versus to or at. And as an example, the other one I don't have on here is that we would say individuals and families versus clients. So maybe a few years ago, we would have said that we're distributing food to vulnerable clients, And now we would say that we are sharing food with underserved individuals and families. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. And I think as long as we are also aligning that with our actual work and our intentions, it can be really powerful. Next slide, please. I mentioned the first person before. So for me, my greatest and most exciting and most meaningful work is when I'm supporting somebody else to step into their, to say what they want to say. So this is a young woman in a first gen program. She's speaking to a bunch of donors in this situation. I'm actually there. I included that one because you can see me recording her for later. Next slide. This is a video project I also maybe kind of wanted to share with you, but it doesn't matter. This is contrary to what I would have learned in journalism school. We weren't supposed to look right at the camera. You know, you do the angle thing, it's supposed to look like the news or whatever. But because of how people are using phones now and TikTok and Instagram, this kind of thing where a person is speaking directly to you is so powerful. All right, next slide. So, at a bare minimum, I think communication is bidirectional. I think we saw that in the service today. I loved seeing kind of the give and receive of that conversation. But next slide. Ideally, this is a spectrum of engagement. This is kind of technical too in its own way. I keep this next to my desk when I work. And so you see inform all the way on the left, and you see defer to all the way at the end. And this can be used for anything. A local government could be using this for when they're planning where to put a park or how to do a park. But it can be really powerful with communications as well. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. All right, well, I'm wrapping up now. So my goal in my work is actually to be invisible, which makes it really weird for me to be up here talking right now. It makes me feel a little bit funny. But I wanted to end similarly to Rachel and Leave by saying how grateful I am for my experiences here and how I can't really overstate the impact that this church has had on my life. I think about it a lot. I talk about it a lot. So you might not think Holly Fox is out there talking about church, but she is. I wanted to share a couple of slides with Rachel and Lee because, of course, one of the best things that I got out of church was a friendship with Lee and Rachel, who've really been partners as we have navigated education, our career, marriage, motherhood. Even before COVID, we would have monthly little video check-ins. It's been a huge thing. And when I think back, now we're 40, how many years we've been supporting each other, it's really incredible. So thank you for creating a safe space for me to become who I've become, and for welcoming us back today. Thank you.
Now you can see why I was so excited to have them here. We have a little bit of time for some questions. I know we don't want to keep the tech team too long, but I know some of you are going to have questions, and it could be that can some of you stay even after the formal part? Okay. Are there questions? Think of a question, quick. No.
I just have something about Bob, because Bob also, we talked about the El Salvador trip, but Bob also went on Seeds of Learning trips for 20 years after that. So, yeah, we have lots of change makers here, not only up here too. So.
Craig.
So there's kind of a train of thought that the boomers have kind of ruined the world and you folks are going to save us. And I'm wondering now that all of you are parents, what you see as kind of the trajectory and prospects for your generation and for your children in terms of where we are.
How long do we have?
I can start since my dad is the one who asked the question. Well, I mean, I would say that I think growing up in this community actually helps me stay hopeful and optimistic and continue to work on things every day and realizing that my small changes can make a difference. And so I'm optimistic that there's going to be probably some bad times, including the floods back home in Vermont right now, that we're going to have to face, but that, we have, especially when we work together and have strong communities, we'll get through those hard times and start to work. As far as climate change, we have all the technical capabilities that we need. This is not a technical problem anymore. This is a social problem. And so I think I'm optimistic we can keep working. I'm on my town's energy committee because I live in a town of 8,000 people. So it's not a very large role. But we're working every day, and there's energy committees all over, and there's people all over working to try to make this better. And I saw, our church working, on when we became a reconciling congregation and working to pass, the resolutions to guarantee marriage equality and things. And it didn't happen right away, but eventually we prevailed. And so I think, there's a lot of hard work to do. And I think that now that you're all retired, Dad, you should retire. Boomers can keep working with us. Anyway, I'll let someone else say something. But yeah.
You want to say anything? Oh, should we go?
I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for the three of you. I remember you in youth group and all that. I'm so proud. Also makes me believe in your generation that you are so compassionate and so positive to improve the world. All the different areas you're working in, your heart is really into it. And thank you very much for that.
Okay, we'll have one or two more, and then that needs to be it.
I just want to thank you all. You give me hope. One of the things that I personally am most kind of passionate about is our environmental and social and political crises that we're in. And you are all touching that, and you inspire me. So thank you very much.
And glow it still glow. Somebody raise a hand.
So I have a question, because I know Gail often refers to me as young too, and it's a lovely compliment, but we know we're middle-aged, right? Like we see each other. And I wonder what you all are doing, right? Because the framing of this is sort of that this is a community that nurtured you when you were young. So what are you all doing to nurture young leaders who are coming up behind you, right? And I'm thinking, especially just hearing this, that this is such a, this is a community with a lot of privilege. So what are we doing to nurture people who maybe haven't had all the opportunity that is, quite frankly, afforded here? So I'm just sort of interested. I know, Holly, I think you sort of touched on that a little bit, but I'm sort of interested in others. And thank you, just a personal shout out for mentoring the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. I really, Leave, thank you. I hold that in my heart. Thank you.
I can start, and then others can jump in. It's funny, when we were planning this Sunday, I thought that there was a possibility that one of my Kenyan colleagues was going to be here, because she's actually coming from Kenya and coincidentally starting her PhD at UC Berkeley. And the reason I bring her up is because she was part of a Acquire Learn Fellow program that we have, which is with Kenyan master's students, and we work with them and build their capacity and, train them as researchers. And, to see her start, she's been with us for almost 10 years, start like at a very, junior level, and then to be, moving to the U.S. and starting her PhD is really, really exciting. So I don't know if I know that's maybe on the international side in terms of, working with youth, but I'm sure maybe, Holly, I know you do maybe more with youth locally too, or lead.
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I don't necessarily have a great answer, but I will say, yes, I am often the oldest person in the room. And yes, I'm often the only white person in the room. And I'm so grateful for those opportunities. And, as we sort of sink into middle age, the young people that I work with, it's the kids are all right. I love working with people who are younger than me. And, obviously there are things that I can teach them and we can work on things together. But usually it's a very collaborative process, and they're bringing a ton to the table too. And I think, I don't know, I feel pretty optimistic about this one for some reason. I don't know why, but I see a lot of young people stepping into these spaces, into their expertise, and I mean, we have in Healdsburg we have two young women who are either current or former colleagues of mine on the school board right now. I mean, they're like 25 and 26, and they just did it. And I don't need to give them the microphone to do that. They're just doing that. So I think there's a whole generation of young people who are ready to step into those spaces and take action. I do think there's a lot we can do in our schools to encourage that kind of education. I think some of the work I've done, some of our education, when I think about it, was still a little bit straightforward. And I think there's a lot of movement now to empower students to take charge of their own education, for more relevant learning, and more emphasis on cultural wealth, the cultural wealth that students bring to the classroom. And so I think as schools here locally are implementing those kinds of things, I think we're going to see really cool young people growing up and ready to do some cool things.
Well, this has been a cool time for us to have you and to be inspired by you. You may have gotten some inspiration from some of us in those earlier days, but now you're leading the charge, and you are inspiring us. And I know that the younger people coming up under you as well will find their own footing and their own way to make a difference. So again, thank you to this community for the support that you've given over the years, and for those of you who've come from far and wide to be a part of this. And I hope that it's been recorded. We'll find out later, so that it has. So those who were not able to be here or to be able to listen might be able to see it again.
Can we thank Gail for putting this together? Let's thank Gail. And I also want to thank our tech team who has stuck around afterwards. Can we thank them? We don't always get an opportunity to thank them. But thank you, Gail. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. Yeah, let's do a send-off. Let's take a moment, and how about we breathe in and remember that God loves us, and breathe out. And God, we remember that we love you too. We love you, and we know that we are called to love one another. So we give you thanks for this opportunity to reflect on what that love looks like in public, and the opportunity to work for justice, celebrate compassion, and be inspired by transformation in our world. We ask you to continue to bless and guide us and empower us. Remind us that each of us is still young, and there are opportunities for us to be changed and to make change in the world. Help us remember that each of us has wisdom to share. Bless us this day and the days to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, thanks everyone.